She's not what you'd expect. She's tough and feisty, but gentle and tender. She makes millions and gives millions to the poor. She cries, she laughs, she teaches, she comforts. This is the Dani Johnson Show.
Welcome to the Dani Johnson Show. We're very blessed that you decided to join us today on the Dani Johnson Show every single day of the week on your local station where you are hearing this right now, as well as on our website. We tackle the topic of success, and we redefine it each and every day because there's been a picture that has been painted to both you and me that is completely false. Such crazy and ridiculous expectations that cannot be met by any human, certainly not on planet Earth. And I don't know about you, but have you ever noticed that however which things are going on inside of your marriage relationship, that covenant marriage relationship, that it has an impact on the finances as well as your career? Your work life is impacted by whatever seems to be going on inside of your marriage relationship and or even with the kids. Well, you see, success, when I first started learning about it, I had grown up in a violently abusive home on welfare. I was pregnant at 17. I was a homeless woman at 21, met and married a guy that I knew for only 7 days. And I had bought this whole Disneyland idea about marriage, right? That I kissed this frog, he turned into a prince, and now I'm going to live happily ever after. Well, I was 21 years old, and I thought I had encountered that thing. I thought I had encountered that fantasy, that lottery ticket, if you will, for marriage. And off I went, off to Canada to marry a man that I did not know. And within 30 days, he had cheated with his best friend's wife, and they had only been married for 2 weeks. Within another couple of months, I found myself homeless with $2.03 to my name, a $35,000 debt of which he racked up the credit cards for me. Awesome. He had no credit. He had no money, but boy, was he good at trying to sell me a story that somehow he was in money and he had all these businesses and he had all these wonderful things that were on its way. Just, they just hadn't transacted yet. And here I bought it hook, line, and sinker, and then get a phone call. He lets me know that he had gone off to Japan to work with a business idea that he had, and he had an investor. And while he was there, he decided to move in with some blonde model. Yeah, and said, "You're on your own, kid." I'm like, what exactly does that mean? I quickly found out that meant that, my bank account was gone. My credit cards were maxed out. I had no way to pay for rent, and I became a homeless woman in the month of December, that time of year where it's supposed to be full of merry and joy and parties. Yes, I was a homeless woman. And I was drowning, not only in sorrow and despair, but in debt and drugs and alcohol, as well as all kinds of sexual immorality. I was sleeping around. I was certainly the town whore, and certainly not proud of those facts, but that is where I was. And so obviously my mind was a bit tainted concerning marriage, but man, it was incredible how this thing fell apart for my marriage, and now my business was completely falling apart, and I was embezzled at the same time. Thankfully, I heard a voice tell me to pick up my mat and walk. And I did so. And I started a business from the trunk of my car in a payphone booth. In my very first 45 days in business, I generated $18,000 in income, which was far more than I was making as a cocktail waitress. And then from there, I made $250,000 my first year, and I made my first million at the end of my second year. I was 23 years old by the time all of this had happened. Today, a multi-millionaire, international best-selling author and speaker, 5 children, 7 grandchildren. Do I have a perfect life? No, not at all. And why do we do this show? Because there are some major fallacies concerning success. And one of them that I bought a long time ago was, if I just believe, then everything's always going to be wonderful. And that if I meet the right people, then I will always be successful. And I'm never going to have a bad day. And everything's always going to go great. And as long as I follow this formula, everything's always going to work out. Well, I hate to tell you, life and success is filled with all kinds of pitfalls and failures, tsunamis, traumas, heart attacks, nervous breakdowns, all kinds of stuff. And every day you and I are faced with choices on how we will respond to the current circumstances that are in front of us, and what wise choices will we make, and what things do we need to learn so that we don't A, repeat the same mistake again, but B, so that we are made stronger, more wise, more fortified, and more peaceful moving forward for the next trauma that's coming. You know, I believe that disasters are much like the weather, depending on what part of the world you live in. Well, if you live anything like in Texas, the weather here is a bit schizophrenic. It really is, man. In the morning, it could be 40 degrees, but by noon, it could be 85. It's just the way that it is. Some days it's freezing cold during the winter. Other days, it feels like it's summer. So it depends on, I don't know how you see life, but I see things that come at us emotionally very much so like Texas weather or Chicago weather or, you know, somewhere subtropical kind of weather where it's just moody, if you will. And we all have to learn how to deal with those changes of season and changes of weather and different things that happen in our lives, right? Giving birth, having babies, to adolescence, it's different season, to what? To, the teen years, to the adult years of your kids, that your kids are now adults and they get married and they bring people home and oh my gosh, all these crazy things that happen. At the end of the day, success has got to include healthy relationships in the midst of a toxic world that we're in, because those relationships at home really do make a difference in our earning power and in our work life, as well as our community life. It makes a difference of our spiritual life, our emotional life, our mental life, our physical life. And so every day on the Dani Johnson Show, we're tackling one particular area of your life and redefining success in that area, because those areas bleed into other areas. So one of the areas we're going to talk about today is concerning your relationship, your intimate, significant relationship with that significant other, i.e. your wife or your husband. And if they're not your wife and your husband, maybe you should think about making them your wife or your husband, or you need to think about maybe breaking it off. But let's tackle this, because if you're single, this show actually applies to you. I think you're going to learn something about false expectations, and maybe you might be believing in the idolatry of marriage, and that idolatry of marriage actually could set you up for failure in finding your mate, and once, or not, like never finding that mate, or that once you do, you fall in the same pit that the rest of us has fallen into with these false hopes, these false expectations of something that is absolutely just not the norm, that is absolutely not even close to what it is supposed to be. So where did you get your idea of marriage, right? Was it from your parents? Was it from Disney? I think most of us, through all of the media that we watched as kids, the music we listened to, the books that we read, the stories that we heard, as well as this. Last night, I'm posting a bunch of pictures on Facebook of our family. We had just had our friend here in our studio, John, is a photographer also on the side, and he took some pictures. I had all 5 kids at the home, all in the same day, miraculous, and all 7 kids in the home, all on the same day. So right away, I'm like, this is a moment we have to get a family photo. And we did. So I was posting a bunch of them yesterday on Facebook, and I didn't want anyone to get the wrong idea. You see this picture of us, and as I was looking at this picture of us, you see everybody's smiling, everybody's happy, my husband is cuddling with me, right? Everything looks wonderful. And I know I have fallen in the trap that when we see a married couple, we see their family, one of a couple of things goes off in our head. One of it is, oh, they look so happy. Well, of course they do. They're smiling for a family picture. Duh, right? And we begin to imagine what we think their relationship is like. We begin to kind of fantasize, and if we don't have that relationship that we're fantasizing about, then we feel like, gosh, did I marry the wrong person? Am I ever going to be happy? Am I ever going to be fulfilled? Is this ever going to work? Am I ever going to be like them? Or you look at that picture and you think it's completely hopeless, that they got lucky, you didn't, and now you have to dredge and trudge through this lifestyle of what? Pain and suffering until death do us part. I've been there. I've looked at that. And that's why when I posted these pictures, I said, don't get the wrong idea. We are far from a perfect family. We are far from a perfect marriage. We have messed up countless times, and we continuously make mistakes. We are human beings. We have a few tools that we have that help us to move through the hard stuff, because life has hard stuff in it. And you and I were designed to succeed at the end of the day, as long as we don't quit, we're going to come out on the other side of this thing. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's wonderful and blissful. And sometimes it's like the season I'm walking through right now, where it is challenging. It is absolutely challenging. And there's new territory, new terrain that we are not familiar with, that we're trying to walk on and work out and figure out. Very different having adult kids versus the kids that are in your home that you have authority over. And hey, these are the rules. And if the rules aren't followed, there's consequences. The choice is yours. What would you like? Consequences or blessing? That's all yours, babe. But yeah, so throughout our lives, and in fact, I want you to look at this too, that we have expectations on a lot of things in life. I remember when I started in business, and I started learning about succeeding. I don't know, for some reason, I thought that once I bought this business that bam, I'm going to be successful just because I started a business, that somehow I'm going to be successful. No, and I think it is the same for marriage for many of us, that, we're going to get married and bam, everything's going to be great. We're going to be happy. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be flowers and, breakfast in bed and lots of wonderful sex and no problems. We literally have this kind of false picture, this false expectation. Then we exchange vows and bam, the reality comes. And unfortunately, too many people quit in the midst of the journey. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, finances is the reason why people end up quitting. And then in some other cases, because of all that frustration and the expectations not being met and the wrong expectations of what? Heaven, right? Being married to Jesus Christ. Hello? No, being married to a perfect person that will never have a bad day, married to a person that will never, ever, look at you cross-eyed, say something wrong. They're never going to have a hormonal moment and have a bad attitude. But no, that somehow we think that we marry this person, it's going to be perfect forever and ever and ever. And for the rest of your life, you're going to feel like the day you exchange vows. There couldn't be something further from the truth. So we're going to poke the holes and look at the reality picture so you know where to set your expectations correctly so that you don't set yourself up for anger or rage or malice or vengeance or self-destruction, but that you set yourself up for success by having a realistic picture of what it actually really is. I have never met a marriage yet that doesn't have challenges. And when I actually go through the best success book ever written, there isn't a single relationship in that Bible that was perfect. Not a single one. Not a single family that did not have what we call today dysfunctional. You might have a biblical family and not even know it. We're going to be taking your call a little bit later concerning what was the picture sold to you for marriage and what was the reality. This is Dani Johnson. We'll continue after this.
Stay right here for more of The Dani Johnson Show. More resources, more training, more results. The DaniJohnson.com Insider Membership is your ultimate success shortcut. Get exclusive access to reports, videos, audios, ebooks, cheat sheets, and other training for your personal and professional life. This is truly DaniJohnson.com's best kept secret. Become an Insider member today and get on the fast track to success.
Imagine living in a decrepit, unsafe hovel made of waste material on top of old mining tunnels that could explode and sink your home at any moment. Imagine no water to drink, no safe place to raise your children, no food for your starving baby. Imagine that your kids can't learn to read because they have to work to support the family instead of going to school. Could you imagine living in that kind of fear and hopelessness? This is exactly what families are dealing with in the poverty-stricken village of Santa Pancha, Nicaragua. These families can barely meet their basic food, water, and housing needs. We are transforming that village. Be a part of this miracle. I want you to go to the website now and learn how you can help. Go to kingsransom.org and click on Santa Pancha. There you can join with other warriors against poverty and help bring a miraculous transformation to Santa Pancha. That's kingsransom.org, kingsransom.org.
Did you know you can take The Dani Johnson Show with you wherever you go? It's never been easier to stay up to date with the latest content from Dani with the DaniJohnson.com app. Watch or listen in the car, at the gym, or on the go. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play and never miss a show again. Your family, business, and bank account will thank you. And now, back to the Dani Johnson Show.
Everyone has a destiny. And everyone's destiny is unique unto themselves, just as the hairs on your head are numbered. Your thumbprint, your thumbprint is your own. You own your own DNA. No one else on the earth is like you, and neither is the destiny that is set before you. And with your destiny comes a path of success to get there. But unfortunately, that path has been shaded, graffitied, all different types of ideas that you've been learning, hearing, different images that you have seen throughout your life that tells you what it's supposed to look like. Well, we're here to poke that sucker in the hole. We're here to set that poster on fire. And why? Because most of it's filled with a bunch of lies. That's why. You see, you've been taught that if you marry Mrs. Right, then everything's going to be great, or Mr. Right, then everything's going to be great. Lie. There's a reason why the vows say what they say, in sickness and in health, and richer or poorer. Hello, until death do us part. That should have been a sign right there. Because when boy meets girl, things are wonderful, things are blissful. The dating process is wonderful and blissful. The wedding day, some of it is blissful and wonderful. Yeah, no, but what challenges are you going to incur from that point forward? Hello? Sickness, perhaps, or good health. Riches, perhaps, or poverty. How we respond in those down times, those valleys, right? Those traumas, the hardships, the disagreements, the collision of thought processes, the collision of living together that comes together, not to mention the in-laws. Lord have mercy. Okay? All a collision. And how do we work it out? How do we work it out? So false expectations of marriage, where'd they come from? Where did you get yours? What was your expectation of marriage? What was the reality? How have you been able to move through and get to the other side? We're going over to Bonnie in San Diego. Bonnie, welcome to the Dani Johnson Show.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, so before I got married, or when I got married, I was pretty sure that it was going to be a partnership, that no matter what went wrong, the better for worse, all that was really going to play into the marriage.
Okay, but hold on a second. What does a partnership mean, though? Let me just stop you right here. What does a partnership actually mean? Think about this. I got to tell you, I'm guilty of something. I have to tell you this because right when you said this, it's a partnership, and right away I went, a lot of people have an expectation of a partnership of do it my way.
True.
The partnership means that you are going to yield to me. The partnership means that I have this idea and you are going to support it. The partnership means that I want to go do X, Y, Z, and you have to come with me to do X, Y, and Z. I'm sorry to tell you the truth, but that's a lot of people's idea of a partnership.
Right.
Was it yours?
Well, yeah, actually, a partnership, I thought we were going to work together, but then I found that it was mostly based on what he wanted to do.
But wait a second. It's what he wanted to do, but also, Bonnie, you had something you wanted to do.
I had a really good role model. My parents were married 54 years before my mom passed away, and they had told me that there's rough. So I really thought that it was a give and take.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that it would be more giving than taking. I wanted something back until my tank just ran dry after 20 years, and I couldn't do it anymore.
Wow. So
I tried really hard, and I just couldn't do it anymore. It's you give and you follow and you do everything you can, and I just wanted somebody who would work through that.
Right.
And when times got really tough and we lost everything in bankruptcy and we had to walk away, my whole thing is we can rebuild this. We're smart people. We can really do this.
Yep.
And he wasn't willing. Instead, he just wanted to stand. I felt like I was drowning, and he was like pushing me under more, just trying to save himself and not really care about me or the kids because, we were drowning. I wanted somebody who would swim alongside of me because I knew we would hit shore.
Yeah.
But he wasn't willing to swim.
So, Bonnie, I've got some really pointed questions I have to ask you. Was there abuse, any form of abuse in the marriage?
Yes.
Okay. That's what this really is about, honey. What kind of abuse was in the marriage?
Verbal.
Mm-hmm.
And there was times I was put in positions that nobody should ever be put in as a wife.
What?
I was used almost as bait
Yeah.
for things that he would want.
Yeah. That's abuse.
Yeah, that's abuse.
That's abuse. Were you sexually abused by your husband?
Indirectly, yes.
Yeah.
I was used as bait for his desire for whatever it was, for pleasure. He would dress me up how he wanted me to, and then basically we would go out, and he would try to get me to attract other people.
Wow. That is sexual abuse. That is sexual abuse. Bonnie.
Yeah.
Your expectations of a partnership were warped, honey. No one should ever put up with abuse, ever. And the reason why you got to the place where you felt like you were drowning is because you were. And your hope for him to come and stop abusing you was humanistic instead of godly.
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard.
8 years later, I found God and got it all straightened out.
Really?
Oh, really? Yeah, when finally able to get out of the relationship, it took me 6 months before I could find who I was. And it was in a day of prayer where God showed me really who I was again. You're smart, you're beautiful. And I was so excited because it was like finding me again.
Yes.
And I went to share this with him because we were still talking at the time. And he's like, oh, now you're most wonderful. I mean, he just totally put me down, but it was so different. I realized now who I am in God's eyes,
Yes.
and it didn't matter anymore what he said.
Yes.
And so I was able to go, well, okay, that's you don't see it. Well, too bad, bye.
Yeah.
You know, and it was good. And I got to start to rebuild my life on the way God saw me instead of how he told me I was.
Yes.
And that has changed my life.
Yes. Knowing who you are in him.
Absolutely.
Versus your identity was in the expectation of 54 years of a successful marriage that your parents had.
Correct.
Your expectation was that because your mom and dad met in the middle, then therefore your marriage is going to meet in the middle.
Right.
And unfortunately, let me ask you something. Let's go before the marriage. Before the marriage, during the dating process. Were there any signs there that this would not be a co-mingled, co-labored relationship, but that it was his way or the highway?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but I had at one point when I was younger, I'm like, I'm never going to get married. By the time I was 25, I was wanting, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be married.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I had the little time thought cooking in my head because I was 29 when I married him.
And so you compromised. You compromised.
Absolutely. I know now that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
It's without a doubt, I know that. And
Yeah.
that's not something that I'm doing anymore.
Amen. And no woman should, no man should compromise. No man, no woman should compromise those important ideals. And I'm really proud of you. And Bonnie, I am so sorry that your husband sexually hurt you like that, and that was inappropriate to use you as bait to go attract other people, to use your beauty. I know you had to have felt almost like a prostitute in some way to feed his pleasure. And it's amazing to me how we human beings can somehow submit to that when we have this goal and this expectation that is completely unrealistic. That this is what it means to be married, and this is what I have to do in order to succeed in marriage. And marriage doesn't mean that you completely lose yourself and that you lose your morals. But that marriage is to be that we protect our morals and we stand strong. So looking back, what would you say to the woman who's in that place right now, right? She's in that relationship. It's been, 20 years, just like it was for you. At what point do you feel like you should have walked out of this situation and gotten help for yourself so that he could get help for himself?
Well, the thing that's really cool along the way, once I did get away from it, God showed me the avenues that he gave me to leave.
All the years before.
I found out at that point, excuse me?
All the years before, you're saying that God gave you ways out and you didn't take them.
I didn't realize it till after I was gone.
Wow.
Like I said, I think there's a really big gap there. It has to be like you need to get out for at least 6 months before you can really start seeing things clearly. Mm-hmm. But God showed me paths and avenues that he gave me to get out, but I didn't. And that's when I realized the power of free will.
Yes.
It was my free will based on the marriage that my parents had that I stayed in that relationship when God had showed me the way out, and I refused to do it because I wasn't going to fail. Yeah. That's where I was shown the power of free will over God's will.
And it was pride. It was pride.
To get me out of that situation.
Yes.
But my own will kept me in it, and that was something I had to deal with afterwards and deal with the pain of that.
Yes.
But I walked through it.
Yes. And the bottom line, the root of that free will and the choice of saying, I am going to succeed in this and I am not going to quit and I don't care what it takes, that was pride, right? My goal is my parents' marriage. You are not your mother and he was not your father, period.
That's true.
Period, right? But it is at the very core of it, we hold on to this humanistic goal higher than the knowledge of God. And look at that. I love your story. It brings tears to my eyes that he showed you, he tried to deliver you out of that bad situation for a number of years. And your pride and your own will kept you in that ridiculous place, holding out for the miracle, holding out for the change. And yeah, so the miracle and the change was that he delivered you. He delivered you. Your king came and ransomed you. He picked you out of that situation. He picked your kids out of that situation. He took you out of that place of perversion that was in that home, and he rescued you because he loves you and he adores you. And just as the women right now or the men right now who are listening to this, they're in the same situation. This is Dani Johnson. We'll continue with more right after this.
People just like you make life more enjoyable and rewarding. The Dani Johnson Show.
I just heard this amazing story. One of our clients had written us telling us that they had used job domination and unlimited success and has absolutely exploded their career. He said, Dani, I don't know where I'd be today without job domination and unlimited success. Listen, do you want more recognition from your coworkers? Do you want to be recommended to people all over the world? Do you want to be somebody that is highly sought after? Listen, if you're in a dead-end place where this gentleman found himself, but then learned new strategies and changed everything in his work life, and obviously this has resulted in higher bonuses and pay raises, you're next. 888-757-8880. Get your copy of Job Domination right now. 888-757-8880. Again, 888-757-8880. Job domination. That's what you need. It's time for you to dominate the job market and break through the rut that you're in.
Helping you get a grip on your priorities and your focus. The Dani Johnson Show. Here's Dani Johnson.
Has there been a lifeboat sent to you to rescue you out of a bad situation? Come on, we've all heard that Bob Hope joke, and I'm sure I'm going to botch it up right now. But here's that man, he's stuck in the middle of the ocean, and, he's about to die, and he's crying out to God, saying, God, please rescue me, please save me, please save me, please help me. All of a sudden, the Coast Guard comes and throws out one of those little round rings trying to help you, and the guy turns and he says, no, I'm waiting for God. God said he is going to save me. So then here comes a fisherman in a boat, and he's reaching out to try to save the man. And he goes, no, I don't. No. God said he's going to save me. I'm waiting for God to save me. And then a helicopter comes with, a rescue team, and they're letting themselves down with their rope and reaching out, and they've got the cage and everything ready to put you in to take you back up to safety. And you, no, I know I'm waiting for God to save me. Well, then, of course, that individual dies. And then there he is, standing face to face with God, saying, where were you? Why didn't you save me? Why didn't you rescue me? I was dying out there. He's like, what did you need, man? I sent you a Coast Guard, I sent you a fisherman, and I sent you a helicopter. What more did you need from me? Man, how many times has that been us, right? How many times? We're talking about redefining success in marriage. We're talking about the expectations that we've had, both spoken and unspoken expectations that sometimes can set us up for failure. And how do we overcome if we find ourselves in that situation like Bonnie found herself in from San Diego? This story actually has been riveting to me. On the break, I had to pull myself together after hearing this. Her husband used her as bait, dressed her up very, very pretty to bring her out in public to try to attract other people into the relationship. Her husband verbally abused her. And she said that God had finally shown her that he tried to rescue her several times out of that verbal and sexually abusive relationship. But she was holding on with her own will, her own pride, saying, no, I'm going to be like my parents who were married for 54 years. No, marriage is supposed to be give and take. And I know that he's doing all the taking, but it doesn't matter. I have to hold on to this thing. I'm going to succeed in this thing. I'm not going to fail. I want to bring Bonnie back here to find out what were some of those points of rescue, Bonnie. What were they? What that when you had finally had this revelation, then he showed you that you were his daughter and that he loved you and that you were beautifully formed together in your mother's womb and that he had called you to a better life and that abuse was not acceptable on his chosen daughter. You got the courage to leave after 20 years. But you had said that he had shown you that he tried to rescue you out many times. Give me one example and the first time that he tried to rescue you out, but you weren't listening.
The one that stands out is actually one time when we were living in Arizona, and I just did. I grabbed the kids and I drove back to San Diego. And the children were younger, and I had family all around me, and my parents were both still alive at the time. Or I think my dad was still alive. I'm not sure. My mom still was. And the kids didn't want to go back. And he called, and even though he was abusive on the phone, I was just like, I'm not going to fail. And the kids were like, Mom, I don't want to go. And my whole family was there supporting me, going, don't worry about it. We'll make it all work. Everything will be fine. But I was so stuck on, doing the right thing. I wasn't going to give up. But I went back, even though everybody
told you not to.
I had all the support in the world that I could want, and I still chose to go back. And then ended up going back to Hawaii for 7 years. That ended up being 7 years that wasn't good, and ending up in the financial ruin and everything. But I don't really care. It's not about the money. It's not about anything else, because you can always rebuild. If you can do it once, just as you have done so many times, Dani, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
For doing all that you've done. You can rebuild.
Yes.
You can do it. You just got to put your head down and do it.
Yeah.
And the thing I know now with God is that he is there for you every step of the way. No matter how you feel like you've been left, you haven't. Yeah. And he is there, and he will bring you around.
Yes.
And I actually became a daughter of the Most High God.
Yes.
And I believe it from the core of my very soul. With 1 John 4:4, greater is he that is in me than he is of the world. I believe that at the very root of my soul.
Yes.
And so there's nothing now that can come against me that I know that I can't prevail over. I just know that from my heart.
Yeah.
But that took really digging into my relationship with God.
Yes.
And that's the foundation of what I live on now.
Yes. And the fact is that, he says that every thought that exalts itself higher than him has to be torn down. And you exalted the expectation of you being your parents higher than his truth and allowed yourself to be abused for all those years, but he rescued you. I can't imagine how that feels today. Please hold the line because I want to get into that. What does it feel like to be there today? This is Dani Johnson. We'll continue with more after this.
The Dani Johnson Show. No excuses, no blaming, just real life. Stay tuned for more of The Dani Johnson Show.
Did you know you can see Dani Johnson live and in person? Go to DaniJohnson.com and find out about our next live event. First steps to success, register today. Call 866-760-8255 or go to DaniJohnson.com/FSTS.
My name is Mario Johns. I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I just want to share with you on April 14, 2013, that was the first day I heard the name Dani Johnson. And I was so inspired by her story. And I just had to find out, you know, how did she go from homeless to millionaire? And it was just so inspiring to me. So I went on DaniJohnson.com, and I started getting the daily emails, the daily fixes. And then after a while, I just stopped reading them for some reason. And August of 2013, it was 4 days before my first event. After work, I went on YouTube, and I typed in Dani Johnson's name, came to my mind, so I typed it in on YouTube, and I sat at my kitchen table for about an hour and just listened to testimonial after testimonial. And I was just so inspired. I'm like, I have to get to this first steps to success. And I had no money. I didn't know how I was gonna get there. The funny thing was, a week prior to this day, I got a credit card in the mail that I never asked for. It was a $1,200 credit limit. I was gonna cut it up, but I figured I'd save it for like the emergency. I got my event ticket, my flight, and my hotel room. I maxed that sucker out, and I came down to Dallas, Texas. And the first 3 hours of the first day, I was just like in tears the whole time. I was just so blown away. It was something that I was just so hungry for. And prior to plugging in, I was a depressed, hopeless, suicidal drug addict. I hated myself, I hated life, I hated other people. I felt like a slave to debt, and I actually accepted debt as part of my life. I had toxic relationships, and I was, and then since plugging in, I've been drug-free for 15 and a half months now. I paid off over $13,000 worth of debt in a little over 13 months. I've completely restored my relationships with my family, my friends. I have amazing friends today from around the world. I love my life, and this is just an honor to be up on this stage. But if I just want to say, if you're new here, one thing that I wish I did is one of my favorite products is War on Debt, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't been following that as like I should be. My first event, if I got War on Debt and followed that with diligence, today I'd be debt-free. So I just want to encourage you, if you're new here and you have debt, I highly recommend getting that, because that's, by the end of this year, I want to be debt-free, and that's my goal. So please help me welcome back to the stage America's favorite millionaire, Dani Johnson.
Giving you the playbook to design your life. This is the Dani Johnson Show. And now, here's Dani.
Sometimes our morals can cause confusion in our lives until death do us part, right? That we're going to stay married forever. And that really is what our covenant is. That's what we're supposed to do. You can't succeed in anything in life unless you make that commitment. At the same time, we cannot control other people. You see, when I got married after knowing a guy for only 7 days, I didn't know the guy. I was dumb. All right? I got married on a whim. It was stupid. I was young. I was blind. I was impressionable. I was foolish in every way of the whole word, capitalized and bolded. But see, I made a commitment that day until death do us part. Unfortunately, my husband did not make that commitment, and I didn't know that he didn't make that commitment, but what proved that he didn't make that commitment is within 30 days, actually within 2 weeks, he brought a woman to our apartment right there in Canada and said, "Hey, I don't know how you feel about this, but would you like to join her and I for some fun? And I looked at her, I looked at him, and I said, what exactly do you mean? He goes, you know what I mean. I said, no, thank you. That's not my idea of marriage. 2 weeks later, he cheated with his best friend's wife, and they'd only been married for 2 weeks. 3 months later, he was living with another woman. I cannot control the decisions that my husband made. And unfortunately, when we hold on, and again, I literally, like, as soon, I actually caught my husband in this adulterous relationship, a month after we were married. And this is what I said: if you confess and you tell me the truth and you tell me everything, I will forgive you and I will stay and we will work this out. And I did. He told me everything. I forgave him. We stayed together, only to end up with all of my finances completely gone. If I had left as soon as that time had happened, again, 2 weeks into the marriage, it was very, very clear that his idea of marriage was not monogamous, that his idea of marriage was multiple partners and freely having sex with whoever he wanted to have sex with. Marriage meant nothing. So, that was one sign 2 weeks into it. Then 2 weeks later, he's in a relationship, cheating on his best friend. Gosh, terrible. But I still say there was something in me because of my moral conviction of I got married, I'm going to stay married, I'm going to hold on to that. And we can hold on to something sometimes that is abusive, that is destructive. Joining me now is Bonnie. She found herself in a very same situation. Bonnie, you left this sexually abusive relationship, this verbally abusive relationship. You had the support of your children, you had the support of family years earlier. You did the same thing. You stayed, and then it turned into 7 years of ruin, including a bankruptcy, right? Worse, things getting worse. Okay, it escalated and continued to get worse. But now you're on the other side, and you said that you know that you are a daughter of the Most High God. How does it feel to live in your shoes right now versus what you lived in for 20 years with all that confusion that you were living in to what you live in today? Tell me how it feels, because there's somebody listening right now that's going through what you went through, and they need that hope. Do you know what I mean? This is the Coast Guard coming to the guy that's drowning. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Tell them,
so,
how does it feel to be where you are today?
Oh my gosh, it's so amazing, because it's like this giant weight is lifted off of you when you begin to realize that the way that God loves you is so pure, and there's nothing that can ever interfere with it. There's nothing that you can do wrong that he won't forgive.
Yes.
You start really learning about yourself. And when you learn about yourself and how Christ sees you, you begin to realize that it's really not about you.
Yes.
And when you begin to realize it's not about you, then you can go about doing what God has put you on this planet to do, which is to help others.
Yep.
And so if by me telling my story or whatever I need to do to get other people to understand that relationship with Christ is the most important thing in your life, and once you have that, the rest of it is so much easier.
Yep.
Perfect, no. Easy, yes.
Yes.
I would say anything that I would come against now, I deal with a great deal of grace and mercy, because I know he's given that to me. And it's an awesome life.
Yes.
Is everything perfect? No. But you know what? I can find pretty much a silver lining in anything that approaches my day on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Because God is in my life. Because I have a relationship with God. It's not about religion. It's totally about relationship.
Yep. Absolutely. Amen. I'm so proud of you, Bonnie. I am so, so proud of you. And I believe that you have a voice and a message. I believe that your story is one that has to be told, one that should be shared, one that needs to be heard. I believe that you are a ray of hope for people in twofold. One, clinging to something that you didn't even realize was destructive, coming out of it through the revelation of who you are in him and how you live that out today, and the freedom, the breath of fresh air that you live with each and every day versus the pain of that oppression, the pain and the confusion. You said it best. I'm drowning and he's pushing my head under the water. And once you realize that you are loved by one much greater, so much so that he laid his life down for you.
Yep.
Nothing can separate you from his love. And his perfect love casts out all fear. And your identity is in the right thing versus your identity being wrapped up in the success of marriage. I love it. I love it. You're a blessing. Thank you so much for sharing your story today. God bless you. Thanks for being here. We're going over to the phones on Jeff. Jeff, what was your expectations of marriage and how did that all work out?
Well, I've been married twice, and I got married at a really young age, and I never was really talked to my parents or about anything. It was just kind of, they had been married for so many years. They've now been married for 38 years.
Wow.
And I always watched them fight and make up, or, it was one of those deals where I thought when I got married, through thick and thin, we would just totally get along and we would work it out. And I was basically abandoned on my first marriage. I had no idea why she left. And it took like 15 years for me to finally figure out what truly happened. But, the expectation was no matter how hard it got or no matter, what we dealt with, we would always pull through. And it was like the very first or second sign of trouble, she was out the door. And, I always had to promise myself I was going to get married. I was never going to get divorced.
Yes.
And that was pretty devastating to me.
Yeah.
It was really hard for me to trust anybody because I knew this person.
Wow.
And, we come from a very similar background. We went through, middle school and high school together. It was very, very young, very, very stupid for getting married. But, as kids, we can't be told what to do. We're going to blaze our own trail.
Yes.
And our particular personality types, which is very similar, we weren't going to listen to anybody because we knew better. Yeah. We're not going to be stupid like our parents. We're going to just do this, and we don't care what you say. That's how it was.
Gosh.
So, long story short, I went through a second marriage, and it was sad. It's because, for the 15 years, I blamed myself. I had no clue, why she left. I was like, well, maybe if I did this, or maybe if I had done that, or maybe if I said this. And I even drove 9 hours from the military base to go get her back, just for her to tell me to leave.
Wow.
And I was like very adamant about not getting divorced, and she divorced me.
Wow.
It, in a sense, it ruined me for years, and it totally it puts a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, it does. Jeff, let me ask you this. You said it took you 15 years to figure out why she left. Why did she leave?
Well, just until almost, I think it was 2.5, 3 years ago, I found out she actually, she had a closet drug problem. And while I was pulling crazy duties at the military base, because that's what they do, is I'll work an 8-hour shift and I'll go pull a shift shipping people to Iraq. And during times, she was kind of lonely and she was making friends, but she was making the wrong kind of friends.
Wow.
So she rekindled a little bit of a drug habit that I had no idea that she had.
Wow.
And she went home to visit her mom and got mixed in with all of her drug friends again. It was back in the days of the raves and the ecstasy and all that crazy stuff.
Yes.
So she didn't want anything to do with me because she knew my stance on it. I have a very, very strong stance against doing drugs because I've got several family members that have been in prison for it. My uncle he spent a good majority of his life being an ex-Air Force pilot. He was doing some major stuff with that, and he just recently, in his 50s, just got out of jail. So no drugs for me. She knew it was going to be an altercation, so she left. And I had no clue for 15 years that that's what she did. Wow. And she ended up.
So Jeff, what about the second marriage? We have to go to a quick break. We have to go to a quick break right now, but I want to find the common ground. What did you discover between, because you're young, 2 failed marriages. I know that it takes 2 to tango. And so what can you say, on your part would be the thing that you are pulling out of this that's positive, that is encouraging to you to know that you learned something moving forward. This is Dani Johnson. We'll continue with more right after this.
Don't go away. The next segment might just change your life. This is The Dani Johnson Show.
The The whole story of how I went from homeless to millions is right here in this book, First Steps to Wealth. I'd love to give you a free copy of this book. Just dial 888-757-8880. You can get your free copy of this book. It's like a real book, my friend. You can get an ebook copy for free right now, or if you'd like to pay the shipping to get this $15 book to your house, I'd be happy to send it to you. 888-757-8880. Get your copy of First Steps to Wealth today and begin on a brand new path of some great success. For families in Santa Pancha, Nicaragua, life is filled with fear and struggle. They don't have enough food for their kids, clean water is hard to find, and they're living in a decrepit, unsafe hovel on top of mining tunnels that could explode and sink at any moment. But a miracle is in the making, and you can be a part of transforming this village. Go to kingsransom.org and click on Santa Pancha to see how you can help. That's kingsransom.org, kingsransom.org, and click on Santa Pancha.
Now, more of the Dani Johnson Show.
You know, my father-in-law, when I met him 23 years ago, he really impressed me. My husband hated his father with everything that was in him. You couldn't really blame him why. It wasn't anything that his father had done, but it's what his mother had said. His mom had told he and his brother his whole growing up life this story, this horrific story, and there was no defense for Hans's dad. And yet, he believed everything, and then of course, you know, truth eventually comes out. It eventually surfaces. And so when I met my father-in-law, I was impressed with how gentle he was and how he didn't blame his ex-wife. There were 2 ex-wives. And he said that it took 2 marriages for him to finally look in the mirror and take responsibility for what maybe he had done to cause these 2 women to leave in the middle of the night with his 2 children. So he had 4 children now, and he had his oldest son who hated his guts. I was really impressed with how there was no blame, but there was just straight up personal responsibility. And then, of course, I would listen to my mother-in-law, who did nothing but blame, nothing but curse the man that gave her the children that she bore. I then sat with my husband and I said, honey, you need to kind of think about this. And I explained what I was seeing here. And he says, you know what, you're right. And he began to build a relationship with his dad. He has a tighter relationship today with his father than he does with his mother. His dad started fresh with his adult son because he wasn't able to raise a son because the mother took off with the kids and, kidnapped them, actually. It's a long story, but the point is that if we've suffered through 2 marriages, we know that it takes 2. I know that there's bad circumstances that happen. And what we just finished hearing from Jeff, you know, that his wife that he married when they were young, they were together since they were in the 7th grade, that, well, he didn't know about a drug problem. And she up and left with this drug problem, knowing that it would be over if Jeff had found out about it. But then Jeff winds up in a 2nd marriage. And so, Jeff, what would you say? Was there any common denominator in both the marriages that caused both marriages to fail? And for the reason of this, not for you being put down or shamed, for the reason of this, you're still young. You're a bachelor. You are able to get married and have children. And so these are 2 learning experiences, 2 traumas, 2 trials. If we don't learn from those things, if we don't pull a takeaway, we don't take something that we can go, okay, I learned this in this experience, and this is what I could have done differently, or this is what I should have done differently, and I'm pulling that into the next relationship. So what would you say that is? Was it partially on the first marriage? You got married too young. You already said it. You didn't listen to anybody. Yeah. You were going to prove everybody wrong, right? People probably told you you shouldn't get married. People probably told you that maybe you should wait. But you guys were completely unteachable, stiff-necked, rebellious, right? And that also communicated something to your wife. You said she knew that if you found out that she was doing drugs, that was a no-go. It's over. It's done. So she rejected you before she got the chance to be rejected by you. And that's very common. Very, very common. Yeah. So what is the common denominator in the 2nd marriage that you will learn from and not pull into another relationship?
Well, it was filling the void, because after that first divorce, there's a lot of pain and a lot of other failed relationships. And it was after the 2nd divorce, the 2nd failed marriage, that I realized I've never involved God in my marriage. I never was married in a church. Even though I've been a Christian, I was baptized at 5, and I had went to the courthouse to get married both times.
Yeah.
And I was like, man.
You didn't follow his way. Yep.
No, I totally didn't follow his law. So it was mainly just filling a void of the flesh and not fulfilling, biblical marriage at all.
Yeah.
And I was looking back and I'm like, man, my parents never talked to me about it. And, I really wish that I had, saved myself for marriage, had learned all that stuff. It would have been amazing to find.
Yeah.
Some teachings on that.
So moving forward in the next relationship, you're not going to have sex with the girl that you're going to marry before you marry her. You're going to ask permission. You are going to have premarital counseling to learn how to get the skills to function in marriage properly. You're actually going to let God pick your wife. You're actually going to seek him with fear and trembling, saying, Lord, I do not want to mess this up again. You have to make it really obvious. Shut the door if this is not the girl. Make it very, very obvious. And you'll trust him and not rebel against him. Those are the things that you pulled from those two. And by the way, those are awesome lessons. Those are awesome experiences. Those are beautiful things to pull out of two bad situations to set you up for success in the future. It's about healthy boundaries, honor, respect. And even then, there's still going to be challenges, but it's making sure there's full communication with the other person and looking for the signs to not marry the person versus looking for the signs to marry the person. Because you looked for the signs to marry the person and wouldn't listen to the signs not to in the past. So now we know. All right, this is my weakness, and I'm going to hedge my weakness with accountability of other people around me. I love it. Jeff, I'm proud of you. I really, really am. Thanks so much for sharing that story. We've got Diane on the phone from Laverne, California. What was your expectations of marriage? And how did that all work out?
Well, hi, Dani. You actually know, I had the pleasure of meeting you a few times, my husband Kevin and I. Mm-hmm. And you've heard a little bit about our story, about our days of partying, and we overcame some, pretty powerful addictions in the early parts of our marriage. But I think that when we got married, our expectation was that it was always just going to be a big party. So as long as you don't change me and I don't change you, and we can just keep doing our thing, we'll have a happy marriage. So that didn't work very long. I think about year 4, we were headed for the divorce, and we were introduced to the Bible, and, we became Christians. So our addictions are gone.
You stopped the drugs. Whoops, I'm a Christian now. I probably shouldn't do drugs anymore.
Yes, off the drugs. Life, we went through a life-changing experience, but the expectations are still the biggest issue every day. So they're different expectations, but expectations are still like kind of where we have the biggest bumps in our relationship.
Yeah.
But I didn't really have much of an expectation of marriage because both of us came from divorced families. Yeah. So we really kind of walked into the whole thing blindly and just we're having a good time. So we thought we'd just have a good time forever. That was kind of
and then here comes the kids, and then here comes the house, and here comes the financial problems, and this is not a party anymore.
Not a party.
And this is not an escape.
It was just kind of walking too blindly, to be honest.
Yeah, I know.
I did have some expectations of just this amazing love.
I know. Gosh. And it's not that we don't have moments of that. It's not that we don't have seasons of that. But the reality is when our expectations are set like that when the hard times come, we're like crushed, or we're mad, we're angered, we're frustrated, we're enraged. But it's only because we had false expectations. No, life is not always going to be a party. No, marriage isn't always going to be awesome 100% of the time forever. And if anyone tells you that they're lying. They are lying. They're lying. They're lying. Oh my gosh. Anytime you take two humans and you throw them together with all of their history, with all their junk, with all their past, you're going to have problems. But that doesn't mean that you can't overcome. Outside of abuse of each other, there still can be healing even there. I hope that today was helpful and beneficial for you. Redefining success today was about marriage because marriage affects finances, business, and everything else. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow with another exciting topic. God bless you. Have an awesome one.
You've been listening to The Dani Johnson Show. It's our belief that you can live a better, healthier, happier life. All you need is a little encouragement, a different perspective, a positive force in your life. Get that and more on the next Dani Johnson Show.